Here we go again, Hornets. We are back and we are looking at our Goliath beetle on page 90 and 91. And we are going to start, and this is in our Ready Workbook, Lesson 9, Part 4. And this is the one where I'm supposed to step back and let you do a lot of this on your own. But since we're recording and I'm not there, and I want to make sure you've got everything. So, things that I want to make sure that you really get. And the very first thing that we need to do is at the top of the page, we're going to write analyzing word meanings, and analyze means to break it down. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to write that we're looking at technical, connotative, and figurative language and meanings behind these words. And then we want to take it a step further. And once we figure out if it's technical, connotative, or figurative, can we break it down into its tone to being positive, negative, and neutral? And then sometimes we look at there to see if that is strong or weak when we talk about connotative meaning, especially, which is going to show up in this particular excerpt a lot. So the very first thing it tells you in our instructions is to read the scientific account and to use your study buddy and close reading to guide your reading. Well, it says scientific account. So we need to circle that because I forgot to animate it, and now we're going to circle it. And then once you've circled it, scientific account, just so you realize they connect, a scientific account is nonfiction, which means it's real because it's based on science. Its purpose is usually to inform, because if it's a scientific account of something, it's trying to give you, the reader, information. And since it's science, it's going to have a lot of technical language. Now, does that mean that also means it still can have connotative and figurative, but we've got to make sure that we're ready to look at some of those scientific technical words about the subject we're reading about. And now, then the next thing you're supposed to do after we've done that, we're supposed to box our title. Well, Miss Murray forgot to animate that too, and already has our title box, and we're looking at the Goliath beetle. Now, based on what we just read in your first video that you watched before this one, you read the parable of David and Goliath. And from that parable, I know that David is a smaller dude and Goliath is a much bigger dude. So when I'm looking at that title, I automatically kind of get a tone whether I like it or not. Because typically when we call something Goliath, just like in the story, it means that it's a really big, large, hefty, oversized giant of a dude or giant of a thing, like in the story. And in the story, Goliath was our antagonist in the parable, so it was negative. But sometimes, like if I had a Goliath-sized Snickers, I'm not going to say that's a bad thing because I really want to eat the Snickers. So I guess it depends on how you feel about beetles and bugs. If this has a positive or a negative connotation for you. It could even, if you're sticking with the science, it could even have a neutral connotation. So I won't get into that with y'all right now, and we'll get to read it. Once you read it, you'll get to decide on and figure out what you think. So you're making sure when we look at our study buddy over here, it says that this science account will probably include many technical words. To be sure I understand the author's meanings, I will circle words and phrases specifically related to insect biology. And remember, bio means life, ology means the study of, so it's the study of insect life. I'll also think about other types of words as I read and I look at other words' meanings. Okay, so with that being said, pause me, and you need to go through and read the Goliath beetle. And I will ask you some questions in a little bit. I'm gonna put this on Edpuzzle, and I'll have questions that pop up to check for understanding when it comes to this. So I'll be inserting a question here, and I'll be inserting a question here, and I will also be inserting a question here. So I hope y'all did okay on those questions. And just in case, let's go back over a couple of things. When we looked at our close reading and we were supposed to circle things that dealt with insect biology. What did you circle? Well, I circled that they have distinct vertical black bands on the elytron that cover their wings. But this is it's a simile, guys, because they're comparing the distinct black bands to a prison door. This is a simile. It's also a little bit on the negative tone side when you're comparing something to a prison. And and then it also goes on to say that it has some of these markings, these different colors. So when I skipped because we've got the fact that our beetle can grow to the length of up to 8 inches and may weigh as much as 3.5 ounces. And here we've got another comparison where it says most Goliath beetles are as large as a mouse. So that's another simile. Did you find the allusion that he's named for the biblical giant Goliath? So because he is, let me clear all this stuff off the screen for us so I can keep going. Because he's the Goliath beetle. Is the most colossal, brawniest, and heftiest kind of beetle. Those words, or do they have a strong connotation or a weak connotation? They're connotative. They've got a lot of meaning. All three of them mean large or big, but they've got a much more powerful meaning behind them than just saying the word big. And they also kind of give instead of that negative thing that we get about the Goliath beetle, they kind of make it give this more of a, a little positive twist. Like he's just a big, beefy guy for a beetle. And then when we look at our second paragraph, what I want you to think about for paragraph 2, I look at paragraph 1. It's very figurative and technical. A lot of it. Then I get to paragraph 2. And when I get to that tone for paragraph 2, I'm not getting a whole lot of Paragraph 1, I get mixed signals. Paragraph 2, there's a couple of words in there that I'm like, oh, okay, so he's kind of scary now. And that would be, what words would you circle? I want you to go ahead and circle some words in paragraph 2 that have some negative connotations that might make you think that this guy could be scary. Did you circle fearsome? Did you circle slash, impale, and chomp food? Not just eating, but he's going to slash, eat, impale, and chomp it. Whoo! So then we've also got the fact that they have powerful legs with sharp claws. And he uses those claws. He uses them to gather food and climb, but it still makes him seem a little bit on the scary side. Even though we open with our very first sentence being technical. Now for paragraph 3 even starts out with a very, very technical. Hopefully you got that. When we'll go through and we're going to look at all of our technical words that we saw in this one, because other words like the Goliath beetle undergoes a metamorphosis. During the fetch, lays eggs to claim plant. It's very, very technical. It gives you its life. This is all biology. We can circle this whole thing. This whole thing is the biology of the Goliath beetle that the study buddy wanted us to look at in the circle a lot. Okay. Now there is a simile in this. Can you find it? Good job. The larva wraps itself in a cocoon like a suit of armor to protect itself. That is our simile. Good job. And it's got because it's trying to protect itself, it's got a much more positive connotation because it's trying to tell you how it is able to still self-protect and it doesn't need outside help, even though it's in a very technical thing. And then our last one, we're looking at the last paragraph says Goliath beetles are truly the giants of the insect world, and their formidable presence leaves a lasting impression on those who view them. This makes him seem like they are the stars of the insect world. He is the author of this. Miss Inez is really impressed by these beetles. So, because she said they truly are the giants of the insect world, and being the giant and formidable presence leaves a lot. If you remember something, Shakespeare, according to Shakespeare, love me or hate me, I'm with you forever. So now, just in case you don't know what these look like, I'm going to show you some pictures of the Goliath beetle. And there he is. Woo! That is a giant beetle. You can even see how the prison bars, they were talking about how it looks like prison bars on the backs of his wings. Yeah. Okay. So that is what he looks like. And if you've seen Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, I'm going to just show you a screen grab of the movie from George Lucas from the 80s. And it's where they're eating what looks like to be some sort of Goliath type beetle. So yeah, that's them trying to serve him on a tray and make her eat him. Yep. Woohoo to Indiana Jones, because we are doing our movie stuff this year. So I want to make sure I give that a nod. All right. So now we're at our questions. So question 1. Why has the author... Oh, I forgot to... What we got to write at the top of the page again, guys. That didn't go away. We're still writing. Analyzing word meanings. And our tone, we're looking to see if it's technical, figurative, or connotative. And we want to make sure that we want to check to make sure our tone, we want to see if it's positive, negative, or neutral, because that'll help us figure some stuff out when we get confused. And then we want to make sure that sometimes we might have to look to see if it's a strong word or a weak word. So it says in my instructions to use the hints on the page to help you answer my question. And the very first hint over here says, think about whether this word is used for its technical, figurative, or connotative meaning. So number 1 says, why has the author chosen to include the word metamorphosis in the text? Now, before you go through and I help you, I'm not going to help you find the answers. I'm going to go over it in a second, but I'm going to give you a minute. But think about the word metamorphosis. What is it? Is it technical, figurative, or connotative? And see if that helps you come up with your answer. And if you can label each answer choice as what that does, it might help you a little bit. So go ahead and choose your answer. Okay, so answer choice A says first off, metamorphosis is a very technical, neutral word. It's just giving you how their life cycle and how they change throughout their life. Because if you go back to the text, next to the word metamorphosis, if you go back to paragraph 3, in the second line, it says it's a 4-stage process of change. So I know that because the text told me. A says that it highlights the comparison between a beetle and a helicopter. Well, in paragraph 3, that's not what it's doing. That's back in paragraph 2, and that's figurative, not technical. So no. B says it describes a biological process that the beetle undergoes. Well, this is technical. That is the definition of metamorphosis, but we're going to go back and double check. So we're going to keep going. So that's a question mark. It might be. C says this expresses the author's objectivity about an unusual insect. I'm not so sure that it's giving me that objectivity. It's just giving me the facts. So just metamorphosis is just because it's a scientific account. I'm expecting it to have a little bit of factual information. So I'm not really sure about C. It doesn't seem like the best answer though, in comparison to what I have above it on B. D says this explains why scientists are impressed with the beetle's lives. Does it say that they're impressed? That is very much a connotative thing when it's it's using expressed. So that's a connotative response, not technical. So, and when I narrow it down between B and C, B actually gives me the definition of metamorphosis, and it stays very technical. But here at the end of C, it gives me this thing about an unusual insect. Well, that's getting a little on the connotative side with that one. So I'm going to discount that. And that leaves me with my answer is B. Yay! I hope you got it right. So with that, we're going to move on to number 2. All right, number 2, our hint says the best way to convey a violent connotation is by describing actions. Well, and it also says up here, think about something if it's a violent connotation, that is usually something negative, okay? When I'm talking about anything being violent, or that's also, just keep in mind. Number 2, our question actually says, which of the following is an example of the author using words that have a violent connotation? So it means that violent is negative. So you want to make sure your answer choice has stuff about it being negative in it. So, and negative connotation, not negative figurative, not negative technical. So I'm going to be quiet and give you a second to come up with your answer. And now I'm going to keep going. So A says she describes the vertical black lines on the elytron that cover the Goliath beetle's wings. Well, she does that, and that's not negative. That is also technical neutral right there. Even though she did, well, in the thing, it's figurative, negative, but we're looking for violent. So it doesn't actually mention in my answer choice about it being the prison bars and that whole violent thing. So B says she compares the Goliath beetle cocoons to suits of protective armor. Well, we already said that she compares when she's doing that. That's another figurative, by the way, when she compares, she uses a simile to do that. And here it was positive. Anything that protects you is something positive. So that can't be my answer, especially if I'm looking for something negative. And in the text, it was figurative. C says the author details the 4 stages of the Goliath beetle's life cycle. Okay, well, she does that. She does detail that stuff, but that is very neutral and technical for the most part. That's not going to fit with what we need either, because that's not what we're looking for when it comes to a violent connotation. I need violent words, negative violent words. D says she writes that Goliath beetles use their jaws to slash, impale, and chomp food. Well, I don't know about y'all, but that's a negative word, that's a negative word, and that's a negative word. And those are all very strong connotations for eating. So that would be my answer. That's going to be my best choice. That gives me those tones that I'm looking for based on my question and why she's using those word meanings. Okay. So we're going to go on to number 3. And number 3, okay, it says, what is the author's attitude toward the Goliath beetle? Think about that. What was the author's attitude? I said the author thought the beetle was really kind of cool, that she was just like, this is the bee's knees. She was kind of impressed with the beetle. So that was my takeaway. I've had other students in the past that said that she had a very neutral tone about the beetle. So that just depends on you. It's hard to get a completely negative tone unless you're just going with what she says in one paragraph, pretty much. So be careful. So number 3 does want you to describe the overall tone of the account and the word choices the author uses to convey it, and cite 3 specific examples from the text to support your response. So I'm going to give you all an outline first. Okay. So using the racist strategy, one of the things we came up with was, this is just, hold on. So don't write this down. I'm going to go to another one in a second, and you can always rewind this. It says the overall tone of the account is, pick one of these, neutral or positive. Okay. And put a period. Then the word choice the author uses is, I used colossal, brawniest, and heaviest, and the author means this by it. Means blah, blah, blah to show the overall tone by using a certain word choice. Okay, that's one way. I'm going to go to the next slide because I have a better one as far as breaking down to help you with an outline. Okay. This next one. So, this is mine. The overall tone of the Goliath Beetle by Eleanor Inez is positive. Inez uses positive words to convey a tone of, this is where you're going to have to tell me an actual feeling word. Okay, you're going to have to come up with what to put there. And then you're going to cite from the text. You're going to give me examples. You're not going to get to use bullets. This is just an outline, okay? The text says this and this and this to convey that tone. If you told me that the tone was scary, you're going to have to give me 3 examples from the text where she's using scary words. But that's not positive. If you told me that the tone is neutral, you're going to have to give me 3 examples of where she's using neutral words and phrases. And then your very last sentence says the author means, and that's where you're going to have to explain why you chose those 3 examples to show the tone. And then you've got to finish it up with your very last sentence with, I like to start with therefore and add the rest. Okay. So this is where you get to start and get to write your own answer in. Woohoo! And now that you've written your own answer, I'm going to show you mine. And if you would like to write this on a piece of paper to put in your workbook, I do recommend that because it's much more thorough than some of the other ones. And I want to make sure that when you take your quiz tomorrow, you have a very detailed response to look at as an example. So my overall example was Eleanor Inez's overall tone in the scientific account. The Goliath beetle is positive. She uses her word choice to convey a tone of awe and wonder with words such as colossal, brawniest, and heftiest to describe the Goliath beetle. And these words have a mighty and powerful connotation. Her use of the simile, like a suit of armor and formidable presence, also suggests her admiration for this large creature. These words in the text help the reader believe Inez has a positive outlook of this insect. I should have said, therefore, these words. That have been better, but I didn't. So I hope you got all that. And I hope you are ready for our quiz tomorrow on part 5, because you've already done the first 10 paragraphs of the Prime Time for Cicadas as part of your vocabulary sheet. So I hope you are studying your vocabulary words and you're studying your notes on this for your quiz tomorrow. So good luck, guys. Once again, if you have any questions, y'all can email me.